Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Gainsight's Chief Strategist of Pulse Programs, Ruben Rabago.
You're in for a treat. It's going to be the most creative session, at least that I think is happening here right now. The debate today taking place is, should CSMs have an incentive comp structure? Yeah. Well, it is definitely a heated conversation for sure. So, I'd love to introduce to you my colleague, Yael Schuler Malik. Please give her a warm welcome.
Live from the heart of Silicon Valley, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the great debate. Our debate today is about whether CSMs should receive incentive comp. Many customer success leaders contemplate, how do I pay my CSMs? Some think that they should be comped like salespeople with traditional incentive comp, while others believe that CSM job is much longer term and necessitate a different comp structure. Today's debate is going to be a true fight over who's right. And so I'm very excited to present you to Andy Mowat, the unbiddable from Culture Amp, head of global operations, previously scaled operations for 3 global companies, Box, Prialto, and Upwork. CSM incentive comp in Culture Amp is 0, my audience. They do not own the renewal. They do not own the expansion. Hell, they don't even pay their salespeople incentive comp in Culture Amp. Wow. Let's give a big round of applause to Andy. Woo! Next fun fact about Andy is that he ran, in the 90s, a 500 retail store chain in Eastern Europe. Next up, from Cisco Cloud Security, we have Chris Dahl, head of global customer success with 8 prior ventures achieving liquidity prior to Cisco. At Cisco, they pay their CSMs somewhere between 12 and 15% incentive comp, with no CSM owning any renewal and expansion, but they do pay their salespeople some incentive comp as well. Big round of applause for Chris. And fun fact about Chris is that he also plays Metallica and Bon Jovi on late nights in San Francisco. Last but not least, we have the ferocious Chris Kristalowicz from eGain, VP Worldwide Customer Success, with 8 years in customer success leadership, built 3 global customer success teams from scratch, ladies and gentlemen. And in eGain, they pay up to 50% incentive comp to their CSMs. They own the renewal, they own the expansion, and yes, they pay their sales team some incentive comp as well. Big round of applause for our team, ladies and gentlemen.
Good luck, gents.
And fun fact about Chris Krystalowicz, a man in a dire need for a new suitcase, traveled to 87 countries. 3 don't exist anymore. Okay, you can ask him later about that. And my friends, the rules are the rules. Today, you will decide what is the right comp structure. So, we're going to get you briefly through the rules. Each of the contenders will have 3 minutes to convince you with their opening remarks. They will later do 3 rounds of debates with 3 different questions directed at each of them with some opportunities to rebuttal. We will then do a Q&A for the audience and complete with the final voting and announcement of the winner. And so, before we begin, we really want to understand where you, the audience, stand. And so, I ask you to go to Slido, go to Paul's 2018 Coachella, and vote. What do you think? Should CSMs have incentive compensation? Should it be none, maybe low, 15%, 50, or maybe you're not sure? Don't listen to these guys in a moment. They'll have their chance to convince you. Okay, can we see the results? Are we doing?
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay, so more results are coming in. We have nice voting.
Oh.
And it looks like the vast majority believes that it should be low, roughly 50%. About 20% of you think that should be high. Okay. It's going to be a tough job. We only have
very
that are
intelligent crowd.
2% that are
Very
not
intelligent
sure.
crowd.
Only one way to go but down.
Okay. So it's a good way to start. And with that, I'm going to give opening speech to Andy Moat. Andy, take it away.
Thank you, Yael. I'm excited to be here. When I came over from Box to Culture Amp, I was in these guys' camps, and things have changed a little bit. So I love seeing how low it is. I think that's the conventional wisdom, and we're here to challenge it today. There's me. So what we're here to talk about is motivation at a fundamental level. How do you get your CSMs more motivated to work harder for the customer, drive customer satisfaction up, customer success, and your ARR? But these 2 guys are going to make some great arguments of why you should go with incentive comp, but based upon data and experience, I think I'm here to show you guys there is a better way. So one of my favorite stories about incentive compensation, or just how money plays some pretty interesting tricks on us, is the story of a study that was done in Israel about a school where they looked at how parents picked up their kids, and they were picking them up late. So they tracked it for a while, and then they threw in a fine if you showed up late. And you know what happened? People showed up later, which is really interesting. And so what they did is they basically took a internal motivation, which was guilt, and they replaced it with an external motivation, money. There's a lot of studies that show that internal motivations are more powerful than external. And so that's kind of how money can play some interesting tricks on us outside of business. Well, what happens if you go into business and you put some incentive comp to try to drive a sales team? This is one of my favorite examples. Wells Fargo tried. They incentivized their entire team, and you know what happened? They lost billions, and it definitely didn't improve customer success. So before you even think about doing an incentive compensation program, you better damn well understand what is it going to drive and how is that going to result in action. But I think the fundamental challenge in customer success is the data is not very good. And I've struggled with this my entire career in customer success. I'll hit the bottom one right now, but there's a lot more to the challenges of data. My favorite is the what the fuck churn. I can't believe how many times I've seen where a customer is green on health score, engaged with a CSM, they're growing their account, and they're even giving you case studies, and then they get bought by, I don't know, Vista Equity, and Vista decides to swap out some of the tech stack. So to me, a lot of challenges in addition to the motivation. I think I've talked about some of the problems with the incentive model, and we'll dive in deeper on the debate. Let me talk about a couple of the benefits of the base comp model. And I'm going to talk about number 4 here, and happy to talk about ones later. So when I took over Culture Amp, I called all our vendors, and our company's based in Australia. That's where we were started, and all of our CSMs were in Australia. And so I asked them, can we move our CSM to the United States, to California, so we can work together to be more efficient rather than focusing on that 1-hour window that we have every day? And pretty much everyone said, I can't do it. And to me, customer success comes before your comp model, and really that the experience of the customer should drive the demands rather than the other way around. So what we've done at Culture Amp is, within a framework, we allow our team to change accounts, move them to make sure they're being serviced in the right way. We empower the team rather than do it ourselves. So how do we do it? I'll just touch briefly on metrics, happy to get into the other ones later. Money's not the motivator for our team, but winning still is. We get people that have won at other companies. We hire tons of different folks in that have sold SaaS before, and they want to win, and they want to know how they're winning. So we spend a ton of time on metrics, delivering them for them, helping them understand what's good, what's bad, and are the actions they're taking the right ones. So in closing, I think you're going to ask the question of, am I going to end up with less motivated employees? I get all this, but it sounds a little new agey. That's our business at Culture Amp. We survey millions of employees every year, and we ask them questions around employee motivation. And what we find over and over again is that it's not comp. Comp's a factor, but it's a very low correlated factor with engagement and motivation. It's more important who's your manager, who's your leader. Are you being developed in the right way? Are you getting feedback? And are you making an impact? Are you winning? So with that, let me turn it over to Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy.
Hi, everyone. Chris Koslowich. So back to the question, should CSMs have incentive compensation? I obviously strongly believe this, but more importantly, shouldn't you? We just did the survey. I was kind of expecting those results. Most people I talk to still don't have a target. And when you don't have a target, you don't have a seat at the table. So last day and a half, a lot of great sessions, a lot of conversation around how important the CSM is, how important that is to your company's success. But ultimately, when you don't have a number, it's tough to move that forward. So if we talk about incentives, this is our current incentive model. The top two at the top are heavily incentive right now for our team. The bottom two are extra bonuses. So getting bonuses and President's Club are above and beyond this. Our team currently has a model of 2/3 base salary, 1/3 commission. So put it very bluntly, they're making a $130,000 base salary, they get $40,000 in comp for 175 OTE. Found that over time, that has worked well to incentivize for the right decisions and the right model. These also change every so often. So right now, this is the focus of our business, but it's not always this way. So when I have this conversation, as I saw many faces, a lot of people turn to talk to other people about what we pay. It's a balancing act. I get that. We work in large enterprise. Our clients are worth a lot of money. The ARR that we have is a lot. But I would also argue that when we have this discussion, the first conversation I have is you can't be a trusted advisor and have a financial metric because it creates conflict. I would argue that that's completely the opposite of what I think, which is your best person is your CSM. And why is that? Who would you rather deal with? A sales guy you haven't met because last time that salesperson got promoted, took on a different region, so they're coming in, they don't know your business best practice, your objectives, your goals. They might have an alternative motive for closing this deal. They parachute in, they parachute out, and ultimately the CSM's left with the account. Or would you rather deal with someone who's in your corner? They've been there since day one. They have built that relationship, and they have your best interest in mind. So the number one thing that I think the key to the success for this is hiring the right people right out of the gate. I've been very successful hiring people that are ultimately my best customers. And no, I don't steal my customers because that's the fastest way to churn. But we hire these people, they come in, they immediately have credibility, industry knowledge, empathy because they've sat in our customers' shoes. And more importantly, they've had success and failures that they talk about to build that relationship. So in closing, what I'll leave is what happens with this model is the sales happen naturally. They're not forced because someone's coming in and then leaving.
Thank you. Ready? Okay, gang. You heard a theme yesterday. It started with Nick in the morning, ended with Wendy Sturgis in the afternoon. And it was all around outside-in thinking. When we look at these CSMs, there's a natural tendency to say, what are my CSMs doing to and for my customers? But that outside-in thinking is actually a really, really critical component when you're starting to craft compensation. And so the question I submit that you should all be asking yourselves is, what do my CSMs look like to my customers? Do they look like this quintessential salesperson that is constantly looking to ink some new contract, is constantly on the hunt for an upsell or a cross-sell? Or do we go to the other end of the spectrum where you've got this kind of quintessential thinker the Yoda character, the trusted advisor, you know, that contemplative person that sort of sits back and says, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could do the other thing. I'm talking about sort of swamp Yoda here, you know, Yoda that lives inside the tree trunk, right? That Yoda is really, really not fully invested into the movie plot at that point in time. You know what I'm saying? And so this is where this tempered approach, I firmly believe, is the right answer. And there's no reason that we can't get the best of both worlds. Best of both galaxies in this particular metaphor. 12 to 15% max variable comp actually makes a lot of sense. It sets up a structure whereby your CSM can still be that trusted advisor, and yet there's that sort of management nudge, that slight incentive to ensure that they stay focused on being that reconnaissance for the account teams, identifying upsell and cross-sell opportunities within the accounts, working with the rest of the teams, you know, a cross-functional way to ensure that we achieve that frictionless renewal. And it absolutely does work to create hunters and farmers out of the CSM team. I've seen it in action. This works especially well when there's a shared KPI structure, you know, that is shared across all of the functional areas in your customer success practice. I'm going to take a slight tangent and tell you a little bit about ours within Cisco Cloud Security. For those who have heard this before, I apologize. I'll be really, really quick. But we basically measure the success or failure of our mission in customer success in 4 key pillars. You can see them right there. CARE, customer sat. Are customers happy? What's the adoption rate look like? If we learned one thing over the past 4 years, it's that the leading indicator of churn or upsell is the time to value. And so we are on a relentless pursuit to really crunch down that time to value. And guess what? If you've got happy customers that are getting value quickly, the R and the E take care of themselves. Your retention rates are super strong. We see 90 to 93% on a regular basis. Your expansion rates are strong. We sort of bounce between 15 and 25% on any given quarter, depending on what's going on. So this framework actually works very, very effectively. And I guess what I wanted to point out to you is that it doesn't just work for the CSMs. Sure, your CSMs are attached to your very top of the pyramid. Those, they have an extreme influence over that experience with those customers, and you want a very balanced look at their contributions relative to these care metrics. We call them not KPIs, we call them care PIs, by the way. See what I did there? But if you're running global support, it still works the same way. That job is intended to be, you know, to boost customer sat and obviously handling the break fix. Onboarding teams are slightly different. Clearly, they are focused squarely on the adoption cycle. And so as you look over on the renewal side, we originally started out with the variable comp on the renewals and AM team being sort of 50-50. This framework worked so well over the few years that we are now almost the lion's share of the variable comp for the renewals team and those AMs is all around expansion, net new ARR. And so I guess in closing, this framework works. There's plenty of folks in here in Cisco Cloud Security that, you know, can attest to the fact that this model in fact works. And I guess I'm going to leave you with this one question. Don't we have enough dissension in the world today? Vote for compromise. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, you all.
Good job, man.
And so
That's right.
these were the opening speeches. We're now going to move into the debate rounds. And so round 1, the question is for Andy. And so, Andy, really, isn't it unjust that employees who go above and beyond not share some of the financial rewards of their work?
Thank you, Yael. So I guess for me, maybe I'm old school in this, but I expect every employee to go above and beyond. It actually surprises me. I mean, I look at every employee and I say, I'm going to pay you a fair base, but I'm going to expect high. And so for me, if I look at this question, I actually flip it around a little bit and I'd say, I think it's unjust that we treat junior CSMs, junior salespeople like coin-operated machines and don't empower them. If I look at an executive, I have a base and I have a bonus or an equity pool that's tied to the performance of the company, but I'm allowed to be motivated on my own. I don't need nuanced incentives to do that. And I look at our team and I see that they're highly, highly motivated without putting comp in the mix. And I've seen what happens. All the incentives change and you start thinking about things differently. So I'd leave it at that.
Thank you. And so, Chris Kristalowicz, anything to comment?
Sure. I'll take a bit of a different approach on this, which is early in my career, I was actually on the technical side. I was a solutions architect. I was building one of the largest gambling sites, and don't comment on that, in the world. And at the time, I identified that there was a big issue. The sales guy had made the sale, disappeared. I was in the deep, dark depths of the server room, and we identified that we needed to double effectively the platform we were putting in place. That equated to a $10 million upsell. After all was said and done, when he came to the office in his new BMW, and everyone came out, took pictures and that, I got a case of beer. I can honestly tell you, it was 1 month after that, I completely left the solutions architect side and joined on the sales side. It was very important for me at that point in my career to understand how this incentive, really for someone who did nothing, got paid, and I did all the work. I've taken that forward in our CSM rules in the current company that we're with, is we do a lot to save the accounts, and in this case, the sales happen very naturally, they're not forced, and the CSM should benefit by the work that they've done.
Absolutely. How interesting.
Thanks.
And Chris Dole, what do you
Sure.
think?
I will add some social commentary. So first off, job fulfillment satisfaction does not come solely from compensation, so I think we can dispel with that. We actually try to create an environment where winning is a team sport. It's not some individual heroic act. And what seems to work for us is to sort of instill that sort of shareholder first thinking, team second thinking, and me third thinking. And we've done that and created an environment where everyone does in fact work together and help each other. We have this this value within our division that we call one team, one dream, and it's not just a buzzword. It is actually manifest in the way that people work together. So I don't think that it's an issue of fairness or otherwise, because we're all working towards the same mission.
Thank you. All right, that was round one, and this is your time, the audience, to vote. Who do you think won? Who convinced you the most? We have Andy Moat in blue, Chris Kristalowicz in red, and Chris Dole in black. Let's see how the voting goes.
Drum roll. Drum roll. Yeah.
Oh.
All right, well, interesting. We see
up
Chris
from-
Dole taking the lead, Kristalowicz right behind.
Perfect. Stop there.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
Exciting.
Okay, good. Looks like we have solid 150 votes. So it looks like about 40% of you are still with Chris Dole, around the 15% comp, at least for this question. Kristalowicz managed to sweep some of the votes towards the 50% incentive. And Andy, you got 20%. So looking like everybody has a fair shot. And with this, let's go to round two. So round two, and Chris Kristalowicz, are you ready? This
Ready.
one's for you. So high commission often leads to cutthroat environments that prioritize self-interest above all else. Isn't the customer getting affected?
So first off, how many people work for Chris in this room? I saw
raise
a
your hand.
large concentration
Don't raise your hand.
of people. So honestly, the answer to this one is very much you have to have alignment and you have to have executive sponsorship. If you don't have those two things, none of the models that you put in place are going to work. And I've been very lucky at my past company, a company called Avangate, and current company eGain, the SVP of sales and I came in at the same time. And we had this model in play before we came into the company. So the alignment was there, two very different models. At Avangate, it's an e-commerce company. The sales guys were focused on getting new logos. But what happened is the contract that we signed there didn't mean anything other than it guaranteed a rate and some contractual terms. When the salesperson handed it to the CSM, if that company doesn't switch the URL to use our processing payments, there'd be no commission for anyone because there'd be no sales. So it was very important for the CSM to step in and help with adoption. And that fueled the fire between the two groups to work very tightly together. At eGain, very different situation. Came into the company, many of the salespeople had spent their careers on just working with existing clients and not necessarily going after new logos. Unfortunately, with many of them, they left when we came in and put the new model in place, but then we hired right and got the right model. One thing I'll leave you with, what we also did is we have a scenario there that we moved to a baseball analogy. Instead of hitting a home run, they're hitting singles. Passing it to the CSM team. And then what happens is any sale that happens within that first year that the CSM has the account, we double comp. So we're trying to build that relationship with the salespeople and the CSM so there's no conflict.
Thank you.
Sense? My turn for rebuttal?
Yeah, go, Chris.
All right. Of course, the high commission is going to lead to some cutthroat environment. Of course it will. How are you going to be a trusted advisor when a vast majority of your comp is going to be tied to how much you sell and how much you upsell? It's just the way it goes. I will speak personally. I'm an executive responsible for hundreds of millions in retention revenue, and I insisted that my bonus is not based solely on the dollars. It is, in fact, based on that matrix of care metrics that I showed you earlier. Now, granted, it might be skewed a little bit more towards the dollars, as you might expect, but it is, in fact, a blend of all of those measures. I want to be able to go and meet with my top-tier customers and my CISOs, and I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, look, my bonus is actually not tied to whether you spend more with me. My bonus is tied to your success. So we try to put our money where our mouth is from that perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And Andy, you want to give it a
Fred.
go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I already touched on this a little bit with my slide on Wells Fargo. It's kind of a great example how you put incentives out there, it doesn't always yield the right thing. So I think we've answered this question. But let me maybe take a little further and talk about something. Quick show of hands, who uses Salesforce here? I know it's an easy question, but just, okay, great. My Salesforce rep is constantly trying to sell me products I don't need. And we've had that conversation, but every month, every quarter, they come back and they continue to try to do it. And so I'd rather them focus on the core use cases and how do we make them better than selling me Pardot again or selling me Salesforce Zendesk version, whatever it is. And so I want them focused on what I tell them rather and what we agree on rather than like what their managers tell them to focus on. And I guess, you know, in the end, how do we solve this at our side? Because you're always going to have...
Now, is it your CSM at Salesforce or the salesperson at Salesforce?
It's both, actually. They're both coming back and talking about
it.
Yeah, they're always trying to tee up the conversation. But then, you know, just in our side, just to bring it back, how do we deal with this? We have teams. So the salesperson is selling it, and they're sitting right next to the CSM. So we spend a lot of time thinking about, we don't put these people on different floors. At Box, sales is on one floor, CS is on another. Here, we sit them together, and so if you sell something that's wrong, or if you're a CSM and you push the wrong product, your teammates will be dealing with that after effect, and so we really try to think about it in terms of making sure that people live with the consequences of what they do.
Interesting, thank you. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on how the sales team works at Culture without incentive comp for themselves.
Yeah, that was the one that kicked this whole thing off at a dinner. I think I was talking more about that one, which is probably a little bit more controversial, although from the initial study, maybe it's still just about as controversial. We hire great people. We hire Zendesk, Salesforce. We hire a lot of people. We are about 80% women. They've generally attained in their previous jobs. They've just been terrific, and they're high achievers, but they don't want to be measured by money anymore. They want to come where they can make the right decisions and work as a bigger part of a team. So that's really neat. My favorite story was we hired a woman from Exactly, which sells sales incentive software, and she was their top rep, and she came to us because she said, I don't want to live in that environment anymore. And so I think you can do it and you can live with it. The sales one, we're still figuring out, to be candid. I think we're 20 million, we doubled last year. Our goal is to get to 100 million in 3 years and have no incentive comp at all. But we constantly get pushed by our board, right? We grew at 92% rather than 100%, and so the questions get asked all the time.
Interesting, thank you. All right, that was round 2. And again, audience, it's your time to vote. Who won this time? We have, if you're confusing the Chris's, Kristalowicz is the gentleman in red, and Dole is the gentleman in black. All right, let's see how we're going. How we're doing. All right, look, we're at 50% with, again, the middle ground, 15%. Andy got a strong start here on the second round with 36%. Very interesting. All right, it looks like Andy's doing a comeback here. How interesting. Cool. Great. And with that, I'm going to transition into the last round, round 3. And this one's for you, Chris Dole.
Okay.
I think you have it coming.
Yep.
But why do you feel that your approach is really the best of both worlds and isn't actually bringing the negative elements of both?
Certainly. So I just firmly believe the 12 to 15% variable compensation is the right approach to take. It's a wonderful and healthy compromise. It's enough to provide some focus where we need it, but not so much that you sort of lose that trusted advisor status. The nice thing about that sort of care metrics and that weighting and balance system is that, you know, as a manager, or any of my managers, they can dial up or down. It provides a flexible framework, so we can dial up or down what we want to emphasize. If we need to emphasize more retention in a certain quarter, we can dial up the weights. If we need to if adoption's cranking along and it's getting to be much more systemic, then we can obviously dial that part down as well. So that flexibility, I think, is really, really important, but not just across the customer success teams, but looking at those metrics is a great way to kind of communicate to the rest of the organization outside of customer success why we do all the things that we do. Happy customers, getting value quickly results in some very, very strong business metrics. So it's just a great way to kind of raise the awareness across the rest of the organization. You know, the last thing I guess I'll just mention is, again, you know, that whole one team, one dream concept, it is manifest in the way that we sort of measure and then incent folks on a variable basis. And you know, that one team, one dream mantra is alive and well at Cisco Cloud Security. Thank you again.
Thanks, Chris. And Andy, as we saw, there is a percentage of the audience that disagrees. Would you comment on that?
Disagrees on this question right here, or disagrees on incentive comp?
Let's go with this question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the end, we're all after motivation. And so we believe and we continue to see that motivation is stronger, both the studies say, and then what we see is our team is just completely driven. We don't lose people except the lowest performers. So we are able to find the high performers and low performers, but we manage them out, we coach them, we give them feedback. I guess the ways you start to look at it is how competitive are people. And we have leaderboards, we have metrics, we have teams, they have names, the teams are competing against each other constantly. And so I think and firmly believe, and I did come in very skeptical, coming from a box like sales and CSM comp environment. I came in fairly skeptical, but I've been learning as we go, and I think it was some of these things I figured I would figure out while I'm here. But it's just amazing to me how driven the people are that we have, and I do believe that it's something that the experiment continues, and it continues to work, particularly on CSM, and we're learning every day on the sales side.
Thanks, Andy. And Chris Kristalowicz, any additional comments?
Sure. So I do agree a lot with Crystal said. My team is not just a sales engine. We're not focused on getting new deals. Actually, when you look at our percentage, 45% of it's based on renewals. We compensate people for getting reference requests. We compensate them for getting people at our conferences. There's a number of non-financial sales tactics that we do that make up the percentage of comp that we pay. So I think that's really important because our targets that we have on the financial side aren't outrageous. We look at there should be about 5 transactions in a quarter, and that's how we build out the numbers that we're looking at. So the vast majority that we still have is based on renewals, and then a number of things are based on whatever's going in that quarter. So it could be surveying, to references, to conference attendance, like I said.
Great, thank you. All right, and we have the last vote for the rounds from you, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So who won this round? Let's see what's going on here. Joel, it looks like you dodged it well. Andy close behind. And thank you all for your active participation. It's really fun to see it live. Okay, Andy's right behind, pushing it. How interesting. Cool, so we still have Chris taking the lead, but closing behind him, Andy and Kristalowicz to some extent. Great. Thank you. Okay, so we're now going to open it for Q&A. We have time for several questions. So again, use Slido, and if you have a question for somebody in specific, you can write that as well, and we can see which questions you have.
Questions? Come on, bring
them on.
Bring them. Oh, wow, a lot.
Okay, so we have a question from Chris S. You can only ask questions if your name is Chris, by the way. I forgot to mention that. And he's asking, what about team goals with variable comp?
Take it first. Go for it. Yeah. All right, so I will just say I'm in favor. Again, if you've got a shared measurement system, the shared yardstick, and everybody agrees to that, then there's absolutely no reason why you can't apply, a team-oriented goal and measure it, on a cumulative way. So totally in favor.
I'll take a slight angle on this one. We started off with a top-tier, mid-tier, one-to-many model. And what we found is when someone was working on top-tier accounts, it was really difficult because they had probably bought all our products, were fully, engaged with those accounts. And actually, the guys who were doing the one-to-many had the most opportunities and most things going on. We actually moved to a regional model where a CSM in, say, Chicago has accounts from top tier down to one-to-many and a good selection of accounts so they can do things. So in our case, team goals, we do have attendance at conferences, like I said, and a number of other things, but ultimately you own your own book of business.
Interesting. And Chris Alwich, I guess while you're there, another interesting question. What are your thoughts on compensating without a quota?
Ultimately, we got really creative right off the bat. We gave a lot of tasks for someone to do. And when you actually start breaking it down math, and you're down to do these really complicated things, and you get $100 if you do it, I'll just tell you right off, no one did them. So I don't see how you can move things in the right direction without having these kind of numbers and a position in place.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. We have quotas. We just don't have sales incentive comp. We have the discussions. If you're over your quota, you get a raise. If you're under your quota, you have some conversations, you have some coaching, you have some feedback. So we don't struggle with the quotas. We particularly have them on sales. It's a little harder, as I mentioned, with all the different data limitations on the CS side, but we still do have quotas and targets, team, individual, the whole deal.
All right, I don't know if I have a lot to add to this one, but
That's okay.
I will say I don't fully understand the question. So yes, you don't have to have a variable compensation on quota, but you've certainly got to have some kind of yardstick and some kind of measurement. So it doesn't matter if it's necessarily quota or CSAT or NPS or adoption or whatever. I mean, you just need to sort of figure out what works for you and motivates your team and derives the best business outcomes for your team. And if you do so, then good things can happen.
That's fair. Thanks. And next question, should sales and CSM work together on upsells? And I'll add to that, should they be compensated for upsells? Andy, do you want to take it?
Absolutely, yes. We sit them together. That's the kind of the basics. If I don't want a floor of sales, I don't want a floor of CS, I want these people sitting next to each other talking about it. I think one of the challenges I always see in sales alignment and territory alignment in CS is how do you get them aligned, right? Because sales territories change and CS do, and so for us, the solution's always been you just smaller teams, smaller pods work together. It's the essence of our models that they're collaborating at all times.
Thank you. And we'll take a couple more. And
I want to see these guys answer the second that
one.
All right. I think, Joel, this one's for you. At the end of the day, if you have to motivate your employees to make customers successful using money, isn't that a poor company culture?
All right, I'm not only going to say no, I'm going to say hell no. You can have a fantastic culture, and it isn't based on how you motivate people with money, not at all. It's how you create, self-fulfillment and satisfaction and making folks want to lean into the mission and the esprit de corps that you create. I mean, there's so many ways to augment and build upon a very, very strong culture. The dollars you throw at people, more often than not, is really, really not what's going to move the needle. So I take umbrage with this question.
I want to chime in too. We didn't post our positions for people to apply to. I had a recruiter go after a specific persona, and actually one of the CSMs is in the room right now. When I talked to him on the phone, I don't want a quota. I've never had a quota. And I said, awesome, you're the perfect person to come into this role. Because I don't want someone who has that hunter mentality. I want you to build the relationship. Sales will happen by themselves. Renewals will happen by themselves if you build the relationship. So very much believe that.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, we're almost out of time. I want to make sure we know who's the winner, and the final vote is here. So let's do the final voting. What do you believe? Should CSMs have incentive compensations? We've heard great views, pro, an extreme view of 0 or 50. We have dull, where then in the middle. And we want to see, did the arguments that you heard today, did they change your opinion? Let's see how the voting goes. And we have already 80 votes in.
Double.
Still 50%, somewhere in the 70%. Most strict no's. I think these have increased. Andy, you got some favorites there.
Okay, it was a little bit rigged. Obviously, on two extremes, the moderate approach is generally going to win, right? I may or may not have set that up when we started crafted this session.
You did have an advantageous position. I'll
stealing
give you
the
that. Okay, and can we see the results from before, how we began compared to now?
Interesting.
Okay, we'll see them in a second. In the meantime, I will hopefully announce the winner.
Thank you.
Totally crap.
Can we
Cheers.
see the results from the beginning for a second? So we were at 72% before,
Oh, man.
with 7% no's, and then the results from now. I
Really
think,
close.
yeah, I actually think Andy did like a huge fight
Yeah.
here. So we have a winner.
Nice.
Awesome. And yeah, it was very interesting. And just a few key points to take away before you leave. I must say that coming in, I was also thinking more in the mid area, but the more I heard the opinions here, and obviously there is no right or wrong, right? It depends a lot of what's your customer success structure is like, what's your maturity, what other incentive and sources of motivation you have for your teams. So this is all coming together when incentive comp is part of that. That's my key takeaway, and I'll ask our ruthless contenders here, did any of your opinions change, or did you learn something new today?
I'm constantly learning about this. I mean, I think we take a fairly unique position, and it's pushed my thinking. I guess I would add that the side benefit I didn't talk about is coming from the ops world. We can change on a dime versus waiting for territories to change or something like that. So it's been really innovative, and I've really enjoyed working with the team. But I think I would fall, if I wasn't in my camp, probably in the small camp. I think there is some value to it, but I do think the second you put money into an equation, changes everything.
Thanks, Andy. Any other closing commentary? Okay, well, big round of applause for these three men who wore boxing suits to convince you of their opinions today. And to our lovely timekeeper, round person, Ruben. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Good job, John.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. Thank you. All right, we're taking a few minute break, and we'll get started at 1:50 for our next session. Undeniable touchdown.